My name is Jessica Carter and I'm 29 years old. What I'm about to tell you will make you sick to your stomach because it almost destroyed me. But here's the thing, sometimes the worst betrayal leads to the best revenge. So grab your coffee, hit that like button, and let me tell you how I discovered my own parents had been systematically stealing my inheritance for years, and how I used my skills as a financial analyst to take them down. Growing up in suburban Portland, I learned early that love came with conditions in the Carter household. My younger brother Kyle, he could do no wrong me. I was the kid who had to earn every scrap of attention, and let me tell you, I never earned enough. Kyle was 2 years younger but somehow always the center of the universe. When he scraped his knee riding his bike, Mom would rush him to urgent care like he'd been hit by a truck. When I broke my wrist in 8th grade falling off the monkey bars, walk it off, Jess, it's probably just bruised. I spent 3 hours in agony before they finally took me to the ER, compound fracture. The doctor looked at my parents like they were insane. The pattern was set before I could even understand it. Kyle played baseball, mediocre at best, but Dad never missed a game. Every Saturday there he was in the stands cheering like Kyle was the next Babe Ruth. The kid struck out more than he hit, but you'd think he was headed for the majors. Meanwhile, I made honor roll 6 semesters straight and got a handwritten note on the fridge. Good job, sweetheart. That was it. No celebration dinner. No proud phone calls to relatives, just a sticky note that fell off within a week. I remember standing in the kitchen, staring at that stupid note, feeling like I was disappearing. When Kyle wanted a car for his 16th birthday, they bought him a brand new Honda Civic, silver, fully loaded. I watched them sign the papers through the dealership window while I waited in the backseat like a piece of luggage. When I turned 16 3 months later, cars are expensive, Jess. You can borrow Mom's minivan sometimes. The minivan with the dented bumper and the smell of stale Cheerios ground into the carpet. I stopped asking for things after that. What was the point? Instead, I threw myself into academics. If I couldn't get their love, maybe I could get their respect. Maybe if I was perfect enough, smart enough, successful enough, they'd finally see me. Valedictorian, full ride to University of Colorado Boulder. Graduated summa cum laude with a degree in finance. Kyle barely graduated high school and spent 2 years finding himself while living at home rent-free playing video games in what used to be my bedroom. But here's where it gets interesting and infuriating. Every achievement I earned was met with polite indifference. That's nice, dear. Every failure Kyle had was met with endless support and excuses. Failed his driving test 3 times. Some people are just nervous test takers. Got fired from his job at the movie theater for showing up high. That manager had it out for him from day one. Crashed the Honda into a mailbox while texting. Accidents happen, insurance will cover it. I learned to celebrate my victories alone. Straight A's, I'd buy myself ice cream and eat it in my dorm room. Dean's List. I'd call my best friend Sarah because she was the only one who actually cared. My parents would forget to even ask how school was going. The worst part wasn't the neglect, it was the gaslighting. When I'd bring up the obvious favoritism, they'd act like I was crazy. We love you both equally, Jessica, you're just being dramatic. Kyle needs more support because he's struggling. You've always been so independent. Independent. That was their code word for ignored. By the time I graduated college, I'd built a wall around my heart so thick that their approval couldn't hurt me anymore. Or so I thought. Moving to Denver after graduation felt like taking my first real breath in 22 years. No more tiptoeing around Kyle's fragile ego. No more watching my parents light up when he walked into a room while barely acknowledging my presence. I got a job at Morrison Financial as a junior analyst. The pay wasn't amazing, but I was finally using my brain for something that mattered. Numbers don't lie, they don't play favorites, they just tell you the truth. I rented a tiny studio apartment in Capitol Hill. It was barely 400 square feet, but it was mine. Every stick of furniture, every plate, every towel, I bought it myself with money I earned. For the first time in my life, I felt proud of where I lived. My parents visited exactly once in 3 years. They spent the entire time complaining about the neighborhood, the stairs to my apartment, the lack of parking. Kyle didn't even bother making the trip. When are you going to buy a real place? Mom asked, wrinkling her nose at my IKEA furniture. When I can afford one, I said. Maybe if you moved back home you could save money, Dad suggested. Kyle's doing great living with us, really getting his feet under him. Kyle was 25 and had been getting his feet under him for 7 years. I watched them leave from my second floor window, feeling nothing but relief. They'd been in my space for exactly 4 hours, and I was already exhausted from defending every choice I'd made. Work became my refuge. I threw myself into learning everything I could about investments, portfolio management, risk assessment. My boss, Linda, took me under her wing. You've got good instincts, she told me during my 6-month review. Most people see numbers, you see stories. She was right. Every financial statement told a story. Revenue growth that looked suspicious. Expense patterns that didn't make sense. Assets that appeared and disappeared without explanation. I could spot financial bullshit from a mile away, which makes what happened next even more humiliating. Grandma Carter was different from the rest of the family. She lived in a little house in Beaverton with a garden full of roses and a kitchen that always smelled like cinnamon rolls. When Kyle and I were kids, she was the only adult who treated us exactly the same. Same number of presents at Christmas, same amount of attention during visits, same warm hugs and genuine interest in our lives. Tell me about school, sweetheart, she'd say to me, settling into her rocking chair with a cup of tea, and then she'd actually listen, really listen, not like my parents who asked out of obligation while already thinking about something else. Every birthday card came with a $20 bill and a note that said, "For my brilliant granddaughter." Not just granddaughter, brilliant granddaughter. She was the only person in my family who seemed to believe I had a brain. When I graduated from college, she cried, actually cried, "I'm so proud of you, Jessica. You did this all on your own." My parents had skipped my graduation because Kyle had a football game that weekend. An intramural football game. But Grandma drove 4 hours to be there wearing her best dress and a pin that said my granddaughter graduated summa cum laude. She died when I was 25. Heart attack in her sleep, which the doctor said was probably painless. I hoped so. She deserved peace. The funeral was the first time I'd been home in almost a year. I sat in the front pew between my parents, watching them play the role of grieving son and daughter-in-law while Kyle sat on the other side checking his phone. I was the only one who actually cried. After the service, people kept coming up to me to share stories about Grandma, how she'd shown them pictures of my college graduation, how she'd bragged about my job at the financial firm, how proud she was that I'd made something of myself. It was like hearing about a different version of my life, one where somebody gave a damn about my achievements. Kyle got condolences about losing his grandma. I got told how much she loved me. I almost didn't go to the will reading. What was the point? Grandma probably left everything to Kyle anyway. That's how these things went in my family. But something made me show up to the lawyer's office that gray Tuesday morning. Maybe it was respect for Grandma. Maybe it was morbid curiosity. The lawyer, Mr. Patterson, was one of those old-school guys who still wore bow ties and kept his papers in manila folders. He had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and he'd clearly known Grandma well. Eleanor was very specific about her wishes, he said, adjusting his glasses. She wanted to make sure both of her grandchildren were taken care of, but she also wanted to make sure they learned the value of responsibility. He opened the folder and pulled out the will. To my grandson Kyle, I leave my jewelry collection and $5,000 to be paid immediately. Kyle straightened up. $5,000 wasn't life-changing, but it wasn't nothing either. To my granddaughter Jessica, I leave my house and property to be transferred to her when she turns 30. My heart stopped. The house, her beautiful little house with the rose garden. Additionally, Mr. Patterson continued, I'm establishing a trust fund for each grandchild, $50,000 each to be managed by their parents until they reach age 30, at which point the funds will be released in full. The room went silent. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. $50,000 for me, money that was mine. The funds will be invested conservatively, Mr. Patterson explained to my parents. You'll receive annual statements showing the account's performance. The goal is to have a nice nest egg ready for each child when they're 30. Dad nodded solemnly. Of course, we'll take good care of this. Mom reached over and squeezed my hand. How wonderful, Jess. Grandma really thought of everything. For a moment, just a moment, I felt like maybe things were changing. Maybe having real money attached to my name would make them see me differently. I should have known better. For 4 years, I got those annual statements. Every January, like clockwork, an envelope would arrive with my name on it and the Morrison Investment Group letterhead. The first year, $52,847. Not bad growth, but respectable. The second year, $55,203, again steady and conservative. The third year, $57,891, right on track. The fourth year, $60,449. I was going to turn 30 with over $60,000 in the bank. $60,000 would change my life. I could finally put a down payment on a real place, maybe even a little house with a garden like Grandma's. I could start my own consulting firm like I'd always dreamed. I could stop living paycheck to paycheck in my cramped studio. I had it all planned out. But here's the thing about being a financial analyst, you develop a sixth sense about numbers. You learn to spot patterns, inconsistencies, things that don't quite add up. And something about those statements never sat right with me. The letterhead looked slightly off. The font was different from other Morrison Group documents I'd seen at work. The growth was almost too steady. Real investments fluctuate more than that, even conservative ones. But every time doubt crept in, I'd push it away. Why would my parents lie about this? It was legal documents, official statements. They wouldn't dare mess with trust fund money. Would they? It was a Tuesday in March when my world imploded. Just another random Tuesday. I was at my desk at Morrison Financial reviewing a client's portfolio and drinking my third cup of coffee when my phone buzzed. Text from Kyle, Dad's helping me look at houses. Trust fund money comes in handy. I read it once, twice, 3 times. My blood went cold. Trust fund money? Kyle wasn't 30 yet either. His birthday was in November, still 8 months away. My fingers were shaking as I typed back, what trust fund money? I watched the 3 dots appear and disappear. Appear and disappear. He was typing, then deleting, then typing again. Finally, never mind, typo my ass. I stared at my phone screen until my eyes watered. The office buzzed around me, phones ringing, keyboards clicking, normal Tuesday sounds, but I felt like I was underwater. Kyle didn't make typos about money. The kid could barely hold down a job, but he was laser-focused when it came to cash. So where the hell was he getting trust fund money 8 months early? I tried calling him, straight to voicemail. I tried texting again, Kyle, what trust fund money? Call me back. Nothing. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation I'd had with my parents about money over the past few years. Kyle's new car last year, a BMW 3 Series, not exactly cheap. Where did that money come from? His art classes in Europe last summer, 6 weeks in Italy studying photography. Who funded that? The down payment on the duplex he'd been renting in Southeast Portland. First and last month's rent plus deposit, probably close to $5,000. Kyle didn't have a steady job. He did freelance graphic design when he felt like it, which meant he made maybe $15,000 a year on a good year. So where was all this money coming from? I had a sick feeling I already knew, but I needed proof. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I never called in sick. I was the type who showed up with strep throat and a fever. But I couldn't focus on client portfolios when my entire financial future might be a lie. Instead of heading to the office, I drove to US Bank, the bank that supposedly managed our trust funds according to those annual statements. My hands were sweating as I walked through the glass doors. The lobby smelled like coffee and carpet cleaner, and soft jazz played from hidden speakers. Normal bank ambience. Nothing that suggested my life was about to explode. I'd like to speak with someone about my trust account, I told the customer service rep, sliding my ID across the marble counter. She was young, maybe 25, with perfectly straight hair and a name tag that said Brittany. She smiled at me with practiced politeness. Of course, Ms. Carter, let me pull that up for you. Her manicured fingers clicked across the keyboard. Click, click, click. Then her expression changed. The smile faltered, her eyebrows drew together. She clicked a few more keys, then looked at her screen like it had personally offended her. I'm sorry, but I'm showing very limited activity on this account. The balance is currently, she paused, double-checking the number, $3,247. The room tilted. The marble counter felt cold against my palms as I gripped it for support. That's impossible, I whispered. I just got a statement showing over $60,000. Brittany's perfectly straight hair swayed as she shook her head. Ma'am, there have been multiple withdrawals over the past 3 years, large ones, all authorized by the account trustees. She clicked again. Richard and Patricia Carter, my parents had been stealing from me. Could you? My voice cracked. I cleared my throat and tried again. Could you print out the transaction history? Of course. The printer whirred to life behind her, spitting out page after page of my financial destruction. Withdrawal $15,000 February 14, 2021 withdrawal. $12,000 August 3, 2021 withdrawal. $8,000 December 15, 2021 withdrawal. $11,000 June 22, 2022 withdrawal. $9,500 October 10, 2022 withdrawal. $6,800 January 18, 2023. On and on it went. Systematic theft disguised as investment rebalancing on the fake statements my parents had been sending me. They'd been stealing from me for 3 years. The worst part, the last withdrawal was dated just 2 weeks ago, March 8th, $4,200, right around the time Kyle started talking about that BMW. Brittany handed me the papers with a sympathetic look. Is there anything else I can help you with today? I shook my head. I couldn't speak. If I opened my mouth, I was going to scream or cry or both. I stumbled out of the bank and sat in my car in the parking lot staring at those papers. Black and white proof that my parents, the people who gave birth to me, who were supposed to protect me, had been systematically stealing from my future. $46,753. Gone. That was the price tag my parents had put on their favoritism. I cried until my mascara ran black streaks down my cheeks and my throat was raw. Then I got pissed. Really, really pissed. But anger without proof is just screaming into the void. I needed evidence. Real, concrete, court-worthy evidence that would hold up when I destroyed them, because I was going to destroy them. I drove home and spread those bank statements across my kitchen table like a crime scene investigator. Every withdrawal had a date, a time, and authorization code. I pulled out my laptop and started cross-referencing. February 14, 2021, $15,000 withdrawal. I checked Kyle's Instagram from that time. Boom, pictures of him signing papers at a car dealership. Caption, finally got my dream ride. Blessed new car BMW August 3, 2021, $12,000 withdrawal. Kyle's Facebook showed a Europe trip starting August 5th. 6 weeks in Italy, posting pictures from expensive restaurants and designer hotels. December 15, 2021, $8,000 withdrawal. Kyle's Instagram again, moving into my new place, goodbye childhood bedroom, adulting freedom. The pattern was crystal clear. Every time Kyle wanted something expensive, money disappeared from my trust fund. But I needed more than social media posts. I needed documents. I remembered that Kyle was terrible with paperwork. He left everything in piles on his desk. If there were loan documents, receipts, anything connecting him to these purchases, he'd probably kept them. Getting into my parents' house wouldn't be hard. I still had a key from when I house sat for them last Christmas. They were both at work during the day and Kyle would be sleeping until noon like always. This felt wrong. Sneaking around my childhood home like a burglar, violating their privacy. But they'd violated my future. Fair was fair. I waited until Thursday afternoon. Dad would be at his construction site, Mom would be at her job at the accounting firm, and Kyle would be dead to the world until at least 1 p.m. My hands shook as I turned the key in the front door. The house smelled the same, Mom's vanilla candles and Dad's coffee. Pictures of Kyle lined the hallway, football photos, graduation, the Europe trip. I wasn't in any of them. Kyle's room used to be the guest room, but they'd renovated it for him when he moved back in after high school. New carpet, fresh paint, a big desk where he did his freelance work. The desk was a disaster zone. Fast food receipts, energy drink cans, random papers scattered everywhere. But I wasn't looking for organization, I was looking for evidence, and I found it. Buried under a stack of Xbox game cases, I found a folder labeled car stuff. Inside, the BMW purchase agreement, financing documents, and a down payment receipt for $15,000 cash, paid on February 15, 2021, one day after the trust fund withdrawal. My heart pounded as I took pictures with my phone. This was it, direct proof. I kept digging. In his closet, shoved into a shoebox with old sneakers, I found travel documents from his Europe trip. Hotel receipts, flight confirmations, and a bank statement from his checking account showing a deposit of $12,000 on August 4, 2021, one day after the trust fund withdrawal. My phone camera clicked away, capturing every piece of evidence. But the real jackpot was in his dresser drawer under a pile of t-shirts. A handwritten note from Dad. Kyle, here's the money for the apartment deposit. Mom and I are happy to help you get started. Don't mention this to Jess, she wouldn't understand. Love, Dad. Attached to the note, a cashier's check for $8,000, dated December 16, 2021, one day after the trust fund withdrawal. I photographed everything, my hands steadier now. This wasn't just theft, it was conspiracy. My parents weren't just stealing from me, they were actively hiding it and lying about it. As I put everything back exactly where I found it, I felt something I'd never felt before toward my family. Pure, cold hatred. They'd stolen my money, they'd lied to my face, they'd betrayed my trust in the most fundamental way possible, and now I was going to make them pay. I didn't go straight home. Instead, I drove to the office of Patricia Hernandez, an attorney I'd met through work. She specialized in financial crimes and had helped some of our clients recover stolen assets. Patricia was the kind of lawyer who wore power suits and didn't take shit from anyone. She reminded me of what I wanted to be when I grew up, confident, competent, and completely in control. This is interesting, she said, reviewing the photos on my phone and the bank statements I'd brought. Very interesting. We were sitting in her corner office with a view of downtown Denver. The walls were covered with law degrees and photos of her with various politicians and business leaders. This was a woman who got results. What exactly am I looking at? I asked. Embezzlement, fraud, violation of fiduciary duty. She leaned back in her leather chair. Your parents were appointed as trustees of your fund. That means they had a legal obligation to act in your best interest only. Using your money for your brother's expenses is a direct violation of that trust. What are my options? Patricia smiled. It wasn't a nice smile, it was the smile of a predator who just spotted wounded prey. Oh, we have several options. We can file for immediate removal of your parents as trustees. We can demand full restitution of all stolen funds plus interest and penalties. We can file a civil lawsuit for damages. And criminal charges? That's up to the district attorney, but with this level of evidence, absolutely. This meets the threshold for prosecution. She pulled out a legal pad and started making notes. The beauty of trust law is that it's very black and white. Either they acted in your interest or they didn't. There's no gray area here. What do you need from me? Everything you've got, bank statements, photographs, documentation. I'll also need you to sign some papers authorizing me to request additional records from the bank. I signed whatever she put in front of me. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. How long will this take? With this level of evidence, not long. I'd say we could have them served with papers within 2 weeks. And Kyle, he obviously knew where the money was coming from. Patricia tapped her pen against her legal pad. That's trickier. If he genuinely didn't know it was trust fund money, he might not be legally liable. But if we can prove he knew, she shrugged. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. As I left her office, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, power. For 29 years, I'd been the family afterthought, the responsible one who never caused problems, never asked for anything, never made waves. But they'd made one crucial mistake, stolen from someone who understood exactly how money worked and exactly how to prove it. Game on. I couldn't wait for the lawyers. I needed to look my parents in the eye and watch them try to explain this away. I didn't call first. I didn't give them time to prepare lies or hide evidence. I drove straight to their house, the house I'd grown up in, where Kyle's pictures covered every surface while mine collected dust in the attic. I used my key and walked right in. Mom was in the kitchen making her famous pot roast. Dad was in his recliner watching ESPN. Kyle was sprawled on the couch playing Call of Duty. Normal family scene, except nothing about this family was normal. We need to talk, I announced, standing in the doorway with my purse clutched in white-knuckled fists. Dad muted the TV with the slow, deliberate movements of a man who didn't like being interrupted. Well, hello to you too, sunshine, rough day at work. I wanted to slap the smugness right off his face. Instead, I pulled out the bank statements and slapped them on the coffee table hard enough to make Kyle's controller jump. Someone want to explain where my trust fund went? The silence that followed was deafening. Kyle looked confused, genuinely confused. He set down his controller and leaned forward to look at the papers. What do you mean? But my parents, their faces told me everything. Dad's jaw tightened. The muscle in his cheek started twitching the way it did when he was about to explode. Mom suddenly became very interested in stirring the pot roast, her wooden spoon scraping against the bottom of the pot with mechanical precision. I don't know what you think you discovered, Dad said slowly, his voice deadly calm, but I discovered that you've been embezzling from my inheritance for 3 years. I cut him off. $46,753, gone, Kyle's head snapped up. Wait, what? Mom finally turned around from the stove. For a split second, I thought I saw shame flash across her face. Then she lifted her chin and became the woman I remembered from childhood, the one who could justify anything when it came to Kyle. Kyle needed opportunities, Jessica. You have a good job you don't need. It's not your money to decide, I exploded. The words came out louder than I'd intended, echoing off the kitchen walls. Dad stood up, using his full height to intimidate me like he used to when I was a kid, but I wasn't a kid anymore. You always were ungrateful, he said, stepping closer. We raised you, fed you, put a roof over your head. You mean you did the bare minimum required by law to not get arrested for child neglect? The words came out sharp and cold. Years of rage crystallized into perfect clarity. Kyle was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. Jess, what the hell is going on? I turned to him, and for the first time in my life, I didn't hold back. Your parents, our parents, have been stealing from my trust fund to pay for your lifestyle. That BMW, my money. Your Europe trip, my money. Your apartment deposit, my money. Kyle's face went white. That's not, they said they were helping me with loans. Loans with whose money, Kyle? I threw the bank statements at him. Look at the dates. Every time you needed cash, money disappeared from my account. He picked up the papers with shaking hands, his eyes scanning the withdrawal dates. I worked 3 jobs in college while they paid for your fraternity dues, I continued, the words pouring out like poison I'd been holding in for years. I bought my own car while they handed you keys to a Honda. I've been supporting myself since I was 18 while they've been treating you like a prince. Kyle has potential, Mom started. Kyle is 27 years old, I screamed. When does the potential kick in? When does he actually have to be responsible for himself? Kyle had gone quiet, really quiet. He was staring at the papers like they might spontaneously combust. Dad's face was red now, the vein in his forehead bulging. If you don't like how this family operates, you're free to leave. Oh, I'm leaving, I said, already heading for the door. But first, I'm getting my money back, every penny plus interest plus damages. You can't prove anything, Dad called after me. I stopped in the doorway and smiled. It felt good to smile at him like that, cold and predatory and completely in control. Actually, I can. I've got bank records, withdrawal dates, and receipts for every purchase Kyle made with my money. I've also got photos of the handwritten note you left him telling him not to mention the apartment money to me. Dad's face went from red to gray. My lawyer says it's a slam dunk case. Embezzlement, fraud, violation of fiduciary duty. You could be looking at criminal charges. Your lawyer? Mom's voice was barely a whisper. Patricia Hernandez. Maybe you've heard of her. She's the one who got that real estate developer sent to prison for stealing from his investors. I looked around the room one more time, at the pictures of Kyle, at the parents who'd never seen me as anything more than an inconvenience, at the family that had never been a family. You have 48 hours to figure out how you're going to pay me back. After that, it goes to court. And I walked out, leaving them in the wreckage of their own making. My phone started ringing before I even made it to my car. Kyle. I let it go to voicemail. He called again and again. By the time I got home, I had 17 missed calls and a dozen text messages. Jess, please call me back. I had no idea. I thought they were helping me with loans. This is fucked up. I'm so sorry. Please don't send them to jail. That last one made me laugh. A bitter, ugly sound that echoed through my empty apartment. Now he cared about consequences. I poured myself a glass of wine, the good stuff I'd been saving, and settled onto my couch to listen to his voicemails. Jess, it's me. Please call me back. I'm freaking out here. I had no idea they were using your money. I swear to God, I thought they were just helping me out. I know that sounds stupid, but I thought maybe Dad had been saving money or something. Please call me back. The next one was angrier. Jess, you can't just drop a bomb like that and disappear. We need to talk about this. This is our family. Our family, right? The third one was Kyle crying, actually crying. I'm sorry, okay? I'm so fucking sorry. I didn't know. I would never have taken the money if I'd known it was yours. You have to believe me. Please don't let this destroy everything. I deleted the rest without listening. 20 minutes later, someone was pounding on my door. Kyle, he looked like hell. His hair was sticking up in every direction, his eyes were red and swollen, and he was wearing a stained hoodie that probably hadn't been washed in weeks. We need to talk, he said when I opened the door. No, we don't. I tried to close the door, but he stuck his foot in the gap. Jess, please, 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking. Against my better judgment, I let him in. He stood in my living room looking around like he'd never seen it before, which honestly he probably hadn't paid attention the few times he'd been here. Nice place, he said weakly. It's a studio apartment, Kyle, don't patronize me. He sat down heavily on my couch, putting his head in his hands. I fucked up. Yes, you did. I mean really fucked up. I should have asked questions. I should have wondered where the money was coming from. I poured myself another glass of wine and didn't offer him one. You didn't ask questions because you didn't want to know the answers. He looked up at me with those puppy dog eyes that had gotten him out of trouble his entire life. That's not fair. What's not fair is stealing $47,000 from your sister to fund your quarter-life crisis. I didn't steal anything. I didn't know, you didn't know because you never bothered to think about anyone but yourself, I shot back. When has Dad ever had $47,000 just sitting around? When has this family ever had that kind of money to just give away? Kyle was quiet for a long moment. I thought maybe his business was doing better. His business that's been struggling for 15 years, the one where he's constantly complaining about money. That business? Okay, I was stupid, I should have asked more questions, but I'm not the real villain here. You're all villains, Kyle. They stole from me and you spent the money without caring where it came from. He stood up abruptly, pacing to my window and back. So what now? You're going to send our parents to prison? I'm going to get my money back. And if they can't pay it, I shrugged. That's their problem. Jesus, Jess, they're our parents. No, Kyle, they're people who gave birth to us. Parents don't steal from their children to fund favoritism. He stared at me like I'd grown a second head. When did you become so cold? When I found out my family had been lying to me for 3 years. When I realized that every achievement I've ever had meant nothing to them. When I discovered that my own parents valued your happiness more than my future. Kyle sat back down, deflated. What do you want me to do? I want you to grow up, get a real job, pay me back every penny you took, and stop acting like the victim in this situation. I can't pay back $47,000. Then you better hope Mom and Dad can. He left after that, and I finished my wine in blessed silence. For the first time in my life, I'd said exactly what I was thinking to Kyle. No sugar-coating, no protecting his feelings, no pretending things were okay when they weren't. It felt incredible. Patricia worked fast. Within a week, she'd filed papers to have my parents removed as trustees and demanding immediate restitution of all stolen funds. The legal documents were beautiful in their precision. Every withdrawal was documented. Every lie was exposed. Every violation of their fiduciary duty was laid out in black and white. They were served on a Thursday morning while Dad was at his construction site. According to the process server, Dad read the papers twice before his face went purple. Mom got served at her office. Her boss called me that afternoon. I don't know what's going on with your family, she said, but your mother left work early and won't be back for the rest of the week. Good, let them panic. Kyle texted me constantly. They're freaking out. Dad keeps talking about selling the house. Mom won't stop crying. I didn't respond. Patricia called me Friday afternoon with an update. They hired a lawyer, she said. Some guy named Stevens. He's already calling me trying to negotiate. What kind of negotiation? The usual. They want to pay you back in installments over 5 years. No interest, no penalties. They're claiming they were trying to help Kyle establish credit and always plan to pay the money back. I laughed. That's bullshit and you know it. Oh, I know it. The question is whether you want to drag this through court or accept a settlement. What would you recommend? Depends on what you want. If you want your money back quickly, we negotiate. If you want to make them suffer, we go to trial. I thought about Kyle crying in my living room, about Mom's fake tears when she got caught, about Dad's red face when he realized I wasn't going to just roll over and take it. I want them to suffer. Then we go to trial. Fair warning, it's going to get ugly. They'll try to paint you as vindictive and greedy. They'll bring up every family argument you've ever had. Let them, the money doesn't lie. No, Patricia agreed, it doesn't. While we waited for the court date, my family fell apart spectacularly. Kyle kept calling me, each conversation more desperate than the last. Dad's talking about declaring bankruptcy, he told me during one late-night call. Mom's having panic attacks, they might lose the house. Good, I said, maybe they should have thought about that before they stole from me. Jess, come on, there has to be another way to handle this. There was. They could have not stolen from me in the first place. What if I pay you back myself? With what money? You don't have a job. I'll get a job, a real job, I'll pay you back every penny. Kyle, at minimum wage, it would take you 3 years to pay back what you owe me, and that's if you never spent a dime on anything else. Silence on the other end of the line. Besides, I continued, this isn't just about the money anymore. It's about the principle. They violated my trust in the most fundamental way possible. So you're going to destroy our entire family over money? I didn't destroy anything, they did when they decided Kyle's wants were more important than my future. Mom tried a different approach. She showed up at my office on a Tuesday afternoon, mascara streaked down her cheeks and clutching a tissue box. Jessica, honey, we need to talk. I was in the middle of reviewing a client's portfolio, but I couldn't exactly turn away my mother in front of my coworkers. My office, I said curtly. She followed me into the small conference room I used for client meetings, settling into a chair like her bones hurt. You look good, she said, attempting a smile. This job suits you. Cut the bullshit, Mom. What do you want? Her face crumpled. I want my daughter back. Your daughter never left, you just never bothered to notice she was there. That's not true, we love you, Jessica, we've always loved you. Funny way of showing it. Kyle needed more help, you were always so independent, so capable, we thought you didn't need us. I stared at her across the conference table. I needed you to show up to my graduation, I needed you to care about my achievements. I needed you to treat me like I mattered. You do matter, then why did you steal from me to give Kyle a better life? She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. We were trying to help him get on his feet, with my money. We always planned to pay it back. When I turned 30 and found out the account was empty, she didn't have an answer for that. You know what the worst part is? I continued. It's not even the money, it's that you looked me in the eye for 3 years and lied. You sent me fake statements, you watched me plan my future with that money, and you never said a word. Mom started crying harder. We're going to lose everything. You should have thought about that before you committed a felony. Please, Jessica, you're our daughter. Family should forgive. I stood up. Family should also not steal from each other, but here we are. She left without another word, and I went back to my desk feeling absolutely nothing. The trial was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in late October. I wore my best suit, navy blue, professional, the kind that said take me seriously. Patricia met me outside the courthouse. She looked like she was about to demolish someone, which was exactly what I wanted. Ready for this? She asked. I've been ready for 3 years. My parents were already inside with their lawyer, Mr. Stevens. He was older, probably close to retirement, with the soft look of someone who'd spent his career handling minor disputes and small-town drama. He was not prepared for Patricia. Kyle sat behind them, looking like he wanted to disappear into the floor. He'd gotten a job at a marketing firm after our confrontation, probably the first real job he'd ever had, but it was too little too late. The judge was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and graying hair pulled back in a severe bun. She looked like she'd seen every type of family drama imaginable and had no patience for bullshit. Stevens tried to paint my parents as confused elderly people who'd made an honest mistake. He talked about family obligations and the sacred bond between parents and children. Patricia destroyed him. She presented the bank records, the fake statements, the receipts, the photos I'd taken from Kyle's room. She showed a clear pattern of systematic theft over 3 years. Your Honor, she said during her closing argument, this is not a case of family helping family. This is a case of trustees violating their fiduciary duty to enrich their preferred child at the expense of their daughter. The defendants had a legal obligation to act solely in Ms. Carter's best interest. Instead, they used her trust fund as their personal ATM to fund their son's lifestyle. The judge didn't deliberate long. In the matter of Carter vs. Carter, she said, I find the defendants liable for breach of fiduciary duty, embezzlement, and fraud. The defendants are ordered to pay full restitution of $46,753, plus interest and penalties, for a total of $62,400. Furthermore, the defendants are permanently removed as trustees of any future accounts belonging to the plaintiff. I felt Patricia squeeze my hand under the table, but the judge wasn't done. I want to address something else, she continued, looking directly at my parents. In my 20 years on the bench, I have seen many cases of financial abuse within families, but I have rarely seen such a calculated and systematic violation of trust. Mr. and Mrs. Carter, you had a sacred obligation to protect your daughter's inheritance. Instead, you used it to fund a lifestyle for your son that he had not earned and could not afford. The court finds your actions particularly egregious given the elaborate deception involved in creating false statements to hide your theft. Mom was crying. Dad was staring at the table. Kyle looked like he was going to throw up. This court strongly encourages the district attorney to review this case for potential criminal charges. And just like that, it was over. I'd won, completely and totally. Walking out of that courthouse was the best feeling of my life. Patricia was grinning like she'd just won the lottery. That was beautiful. The judge threw everything at them. What happens now? They have 30 days to pay you. If they don't, we can start seizing assets, bank accounts, the house, cars, whatever they've got. And criminal charges. The DA will probably file them. With the judge's recommendation and this level of evidence, it's almost guaranteed. I felt lighter than I had in years, like a weight I didn't even realize I'd been carrying had been lifted off my shoulders. My phone buzzed with a text from Kyle. We need to talk. I showed it to Patricia. She rolled her eyes. Let me guess, he wants to negotiate on behalf of his parents. Probably. Don't, you won. Don't let them guilt you into giving up what you're owed. But curiosity got the better of me. I called Kyle back. They don't have $62,000, he said without preamble. That's not my problem. Jess, they're going to lose the house. Good, maybe they can rent a studio apartment and see how the other half lives. This is bigger than you. What about mom's job? What about dad's business? You're destroying their entire lives. I stopped walking and stood on the courthouse steps, people flowing around me like water. Kyle, they destroyed mine first. They stole my future and gave it to you. They lied to me for 3 years. They showed me exactly how much they valued me and it was zero. So this is revenge? No, this is justice. There's a difference. What if I pay you back? I've got the job now. I can set up a payment plan. You'll be paying me back anyway. The money you spent came from my account, but that doesn't get them off the hook for stealing it in the first place. Jess, please, I'm begging you, don't send our parents to prison. I'm not sending them anywhere. Their choices sent them there. I hung up and blocked his number. My parents didn't have $62,000. Of course they didn't. Dad's construction business was barely breaking even, and most of their savings had gone to funding Kyle's lifestyle over the years. Patricia filed papers to seize their assets within a week of the 30-day deadline. Their bank accounts were frozen first, then came the lien on the house. Kyle called me from a number I didn't recognize, sobbing into the phone. They're losing everything, Jess. Everything. Dad's business is going under. Mom had to quit her job because of the stress. They're talking about living in their car. They should have thought about that before they committed felony theft. You got your money back, isn't that enough? I got some of my money back. What about the 3 years of compound interest I lost? What about the emotional damage of being betrayed by my own parents? How much is enough, Jess? How much revenge do you need? I thought about that question for a long time after he hung up. How much was enough? Was it enough that they'd lost their house? Was it enough that Dad's business was collapsing? Was it enough that Mom was having anxiety attacks that sent her to the ER twice? Or was it enough that I finally felt like I mattered? That for the first time in my life, my needs had come first? That someone, even if it was a judge, had acknowledged that what they did to me was wrong? Yeah, that was enough. With my money back plus interest and penalties, I did exactly what I'd always planned to do. I bought a house, not a condo, not an apartment, a real house with a yard and a garden. It was small, just 2 bedrooms, but it was mine. I painted the walls whatever colors I wanted. I planted roses like Grandma used to grow. I created a home office where I could see the mountains through the window. For the first time in my life, I felt proud of where I lived. I also started my own consulting business, specializing in financial planning for people who'd been financially abused by family members. You'd be amazed how common it is. Parents who drain their kids' college funds for their own expenses. Siblings who manipulate their way into early inheritances. Spouses who hide assets and steal from joint accounts. Adult children who financially abuse elderly parents. Financial abuse is real and it's devastating. But here's the thing, when you know how money works, when you understand your rights, you can fight back. My first client was a woman named Sarah, whose husband had been siphoning money from their kids' college funds to fund his gambling addiction. We recovered every penny and got him criminally charged. My second client was a man whose sister had convinced their elderly father to change his will, cutting out all the other siblings. We proved undue influence and got the will overturned. My third client was a college student whose parents had taken out credit cards in her name and destroyed her credit before she even graduated. We got the charges reversed and her credit restored. Every case I won, I thought about that girl who used to cry in bank parking lots, feeling powerless and worthless. She wasn't powerless, she just didn't know it yet. Within a year, my business was thriving. I had more clients than I could handle and a waiting list 3 months long. I hired an assistant, then a second consultant. We moved into a real office with a conference room and everything. I was featured in the Denver Business Journal as rising star in financial advocacy. The article included a photo of me in my office, confident and professional and completely in control of my life. My parents would have been proud if they'd been capable of pride that wasn't directed at Kyle, but that was their loss, not mine. The district attorney did file criminal charges, felony embezzlement and fraud. My parents pled guilty as part of a deal that kept them out of prison but put them on probation for 5 years. They also had to pay additional fines and restitution. Dad's construction business folded. Mom couldn't find another job in accounting. Who wants to hire someone with a felony conviction for financial crimes? They ended up renting a small apartment in a part of town they used to make fun of. The kind of place I'd lived when I first moved to Denver. Kyle tried to support them, but his marketing job barely covered his own expenses, let alone supporting 3 adults. The family that had been built on favoritism and lies crumbled when the money ran out. I felt nothing watching it happen. No satisfaction, no regret, just nothing. They'd made their choices. Now they were living with the consequences. Comment if you think the criminal charges were justified, or if you think I went too far.